our last speaker of the evening. Delighted to introduce Commandant Conor King of RACO General Secretary. Conor, again, key member of the 75th Cadet class, and most importantly, buddy to me for a year in the cadet school. Commandant Conor King has over 21 years service in the Defence Forces and is in his second year as RACO General Secretary. His last position prior to being seconded to RACO was as OC of one mechanised infantry company, the DFTC, and he's also served in a variety of appointments at unit formation and DFHQ level, as well as overseas, as mentioned, in the Balkans, Middle East, and Africa. He's also served as a staff officer analyst in the strategic planning branch in DFHQ during the development of the current white paper on defence, and fed into that process significantly. His other appointments have included as a senior auditor in the Office of the Controller and Auditor General while on secondment to that office. Delighted to call on Conor to talk about the Commission on Defence from the perspective of DF officers. Conor.
Thanks, Pat. I really welcome the opportunity to contribute on behalf of our members to this crucial conversation on the future of defence. And I compliment IDFOC for the foresight and energy that you've shown in organising these discussions. This really is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to have a serious conversation about the range of threats that the state faces and where the DF fits into the mitigation of these. I hope that I can add some value and context from the perspective of serving PDF members. A note of caution, however, while I may have plenty of opinions that I'm sure are shared within the audience on whether our current capability matches the threats facing us, how much the defence budget should really be, and what active military neutrality really means, I must endeavour to remain within the scope of Defence Forces representation. If I stray, I'm sure there's a voodoo doll somewhere bearing a remarkable likeness to me that will be getting prodded. With that in mind, RACO's mission is to champion the well-being of our members, and by extension, all Defence Forces personnel and the wider organisation. There are, of course, intrinsic limits to representation that we do accept, such as a prohibition on industrial action, mindful that there should be a premium attached to this prohibition. We are the competent military authority on Defence Forces pay and conditions of service, and we're mandated to negotiate directly with government on behalf of our members to that end. We represent 97% of Defence Forces officers in a strong, professional and truthful manner. We're identified as a strategic partner to the Defence Organisation and have a statutorily based role in employee voice, leadership and change management to positively influence outcomes. We are one leg of a three-legged stool, and while we will hold management to account, we do so only for the betterment of the Defence Forces, mandated of course by our National Executive on behalf of RACO's members. During RACO's appearance before the Joint Oireachtas Committee on Foreign Affairs, Trade and Defence in May 2019, we asserted that the cost benefit of retention over recruitment is indisputable. The unique demands of Defence Force service require specialist in-house military training and the development of military specialist skills. Unlike other entities, the Defence Forces cannot draw on externally trained professionals to immediately fill organisational vacancies. We wondered aloud at that time, at what point of dysfunction would management favour retention over the continual failing demands of recruitment? We can't go to market to replace a middle manager, such as an experienced captain or sergeant. We replace them with cadets and recruits. At a turnover rate then of 9%, subsequently went to 10%, the policy is doomed to fail. With this in mind, we stated on that day that a comprehensive external review, similar in nature and scope to the Gleeson Commission in 1990, should now be considered by government, where management was unable or unwilling to address the underlying organisational issues. And we're pleased to see that this call has been somewhat heeded. Moving on to the programme for government, it asserts that the Commission will undertake a comprehensive review on arrangements for the effective defence of the country at land, sea and in the air. But what about cyber and space? Okay, well, we're not going to be embarking on any lunar missions in the medium term. Any realistic 21st century threat assessment must have cyber defence and cyber security at its core. Structures for governance, joint command and control and the brigade structure. There's really a lot in this, much of which is in fact included in various White Paper 2015 projects, alas, many of which have not yet commenced, 5 years into the project. Pay and allowances and composition of the Defence Forces and recruitment, retention and career progression. We're getting back to Gleeson here, and not before time. It should be noted, however, as was alluded to by previous contributors in previous weeks, that we're suffering from a sort of review fatigue at this stage. Guys, the research has been done, the results are in. The turnover rate and the associated deployable strength are all that count as KPIs in this regard. We should earnestly hope that these measures will be fast-tracked, not in lieu of governance reform or comprehensive threat and future force structure analysis, but in tandem with this essential work. And of course, the contribution of the Reserve Defence Forces, which Neil has comprehensively covered, though I would absolutely echo the requirement for the reinstatement of a PDF cadre for obvious reasons. The Commission would consult widely on the terms of reference, which will be established by the end of 2020, with a mandate to report within 12 months. Ambitious. We are expecting to be contacted regarding our own views on the TORs any day now. The outcome of this review will remain grounded in a policy of active military neutrality and participative multilateralism, there's a mouthful, through the United Nations and the EU. Upon completion of the Commission's work, a permanent pay review body would be established, reflecting the unique nature of military service in the context of the wider public service. All recommendations by the Commission or the successor body, the pay review body, and their implementation must, according to the text, be consistent with national public sector wage policy. We can see why this was included, but here's the rub. The Defence Forces is, according to the CSO, consistently at the bottom of the public sector pay table. It's only through the breaking of relativities with other sectors that we can ever hope to become an employer of choice again, ensuring the capacity to deliver by retaining our human capital. Rigid adherence to national pay policy, and at the same time recognising the unique nature of military service, are uneasy bedfellows. RACO has consistently raised the issues of defence forces and particularly officer retention and conditions of service and linked these to organisational capability. We commend the efforts of our former member, Dr. Jerry Waldron, in making such a great success of Slaughndale earlier this year, and we recognise the importance of having a national security conference publicly debate the state's requirement for the first time for this national security strategy and the essential role the defence forces will play in implementing it. RACO contributed an extensive submission to the strategy formulation process, which reflected the knowledge base that exists within our membership and looks forward to the publication. It's of course imperative that Óglaigh Dahair must always retain and build on its core competencies to allow it to fulfil the crucial roles that will be identified by such a national security strategy. It's highly likely that such a strategy would identify the possibility of a global pandemic as one of its high-level threats. As we're all too aware, this pandemic has become a reality, and the state has mobilised its assets to mitigate this threat. As part of that response, the DF has temporarily stood up a joint task force to primarily assist the HSE in a variety of tasks, ranging from contact tracing to testing to log support, including test centre construction and PPE delivery. The Joint Task Force Commander has rightly identified the diversity of skill sets possessed by officers attached to the task force, both serving and reserve, might I add, from all services. A capacity to respond quickly, professionally and in an agile manner to imminent threats is only possible if the Defence Force retains these skills, earned through years of training and experience both domestically and overseas. The state has been fortunate to be able to utilise the reservoir of competencies that exists within the organisation across 3 services, and which the JTF has been able to draw from during the Defence Force's response to COVID-19 in support of the HSE. Our people receive excellent training, and then they put it to the test both domestically and overseas, which ultimately provides the organisation with a diverse range of skill sets to respond quickly and effectively when a crisis emerges. One might then have imagined that we would then look to, at the very least, retain these personnel, if not increase their numbers, yet the hemorrhaging of talent from the organisation has continued. Interested parties will be aware that the high-level implementation plan strengthening our defence forces is failing to meet its agreed timelines in over half of its assigned projects. This would be wholly unacceptable at any juncture, but to consider that it's occurring at a time when the Defence Forces has been responding quickly and effectively to an unfolding public health emergency is actually unconscionable, in spite of the retention crisis. The new programme for government contains some positive commitments for the Defence Forces, which, if delivered, have the potential to really improve the lot of the organisation and raise morale. Enhanced healthcare benefits for enlisted personnel, and the commitment to finally implement the health and safety provisions of the EU Working Time Directive are encouraging and well behind time at this stage. 30 years after Gleeson, the announcement of a Commission on Defence is timely and with the right approach can be of great benefit to the organisation. Our members feel strongly that it is essential that all aspects of the organisation, both civil and military, are examined in order to determine the most effective governance model to drive capability and retain capacity. The pledge to introduce the permanent independent Defence Forces pay review body that recognises the unique nature of military service is also welcome, and we have been consistent in seeking the introduction of such a statutory body. We must be clear, however, that immediate retention measures are required to stop the bleed. It has been proven beyond doubt that with the current rate of dysfunctional turnover, the Defence Forces will continue to reduce in strength and capacity without urgent remedial action. The stats speak for themselves. In this regard, it really is worth recalling the Public Service Pay Commission's own findings in May 2019. And let me quote, "The conclusions from this study suggest that the Defence Forces is at a critical juncture. The findings presented intimate that without immediate and substantial intervention, particularly in respect of pay, allowances and pension entitlements, the organisation may, within a short time frame, face major difficulties in maintaining its personnel and carrying out its mandate." And what does that mean for our own defence capability? The Commission will be unwise to ignore this. We welcome the appointment of Minister Simon Coveney as Minister for Defence, a role which he assumes in addition to his role as Minister for Foreign Affairs. Minister Coveney last held the defence portfolio in 2015 and indeed signed off on the current white paper at 15 to 25. It is hoped that his appointment at such a crucial time for the DF will provide badly needed impetus to the implementation of a strategic plan for the Defence Forces. For defence indeed, with over half of the 95 white paper projects yet to commence and less than 20% completed. RACO will of course work with the Minister in a constructive and collaborative manner, and his portfolio is shaping up to be an extremely busy one, with the task of restoring morale in the Defence Forces competing inevitably with Brexit and all the challenges it encompasses, along with filling Ireland's recently attained seat in the UN Security Council. We absolutely wish the Minister well in his new brief, and we look forward to regular and constructive engagement. Let's not forget, we're all on the same side. Finally, I agree wholeheartedly that the Commission on Defence must be outward looking and draw on the experience of experts from all quarters: civil, military, academic, serving and retired, domestic and international, while most importantly consulting with all stakeholders. I also agree with previous speakers that it should not be encumbered with the remuneration and retention of personnel. Rather, this must be an ongoing effort, but one at which we are currently failing. Essentially, in blunt terms, the Commission must figure out what it is Ireland wants the Defence Forces to do, and then resource us to carry out the assigned roles. Our members firmly believe that a realistic 21st century threat assessment must be carried out, comprising all of the 5 domains, and the resource envelope must then be allocated accordingly. We have to communicate our relevance to our fellow citizens in language they can understand, and demonstrate the value for money of a strong and visible defence force as a cornerstone of security, economic prosperity and national well-being. But if retention is ignored, then by the time the Commission has concluded its deliberations, there might not be too much left to deploy, and the state will be all the worse for it. It takes years to build a capability, but only a minute to lose it. Finally, we cannot allow the likes of COVID-19 and the inevitable shock to the public finances to be a reason not to invest in defence. On the contrary, it is specifically for black swan events, such as a global pandemic, that we need a robust national insurance policy that the Defence Forces provides. We'll miss it when it's gone. Thanks.